Okay, guys, I think we can start. So we have seen the seedling establishment. The seed germinated and then it expanded, and then now this cell division started to occur. The root penetrated into the soil. It started to get mineral nutrients from the soil, water from the soil, and the hook opened, and protochlorophyll, they turned to green. They started to produce sugar. So if the plant survives, now there is nothing else for it to reach to a grown plant. And this chapter now today is about abiotic stresses, because all these plants, if they survive after seedling establishment, they will feel stress. So stress is the normal life of a plant. Sometimes the stress might be very harsh, sometimes much milder. And for us, it's a very important topic because we want to improve the yield, and one of the main factors that limits the yield is stress. The most important stresses right now, I think, is drought and heat stress, because due to the global warming, the yields are getting much less. But there are other abiotic stresses as well. Abiotic means stress originated from non-living things like heavy metals, salt, water stress, and so on. They chose such a picture. Why do you think they choose this picture but not others? How is it related to abiotic stress? Let's give 1 minute or 30 seconds. Yaren, would you like to answer this question? What do you think the reason is? Okay, so you think this is related to the abiotic stress because this is a stressful environment for the plant. Okay, yes, any other idea? Yes.
Much light, much sunlight, maybe a lack of nutrients in the soil because it's on the rocks.
There is no soil almost, right? It's just rocks.
Yeah, that's right. And maybe lack of water. And from wind also, maybe if it's a high mountain,
yeah.
Direction of
yeah, so it seems like this plant is like a statue for abiotic stress. I mean, it's so successful, it grows so much. This means it knew already how to deal with stress. The stress of sunlight, the stress of lack of nutrients, and so on. What are we gonna cover in this topic? Let's see. So this is our outline. We will start defining the stress for plants because it's different for animals. And then we will talk about acclimation, which is how plants adapt to the environment. But this is different from genetic adaptation, the adaptation which Charles Darwin proposed, so we will differentiate it. Then how plants are acclimated. We will talk about the stress factors. So this includes water deficiency, salinity, temperature, and so on. So these are the main abiotic stresses. Why are they causing stress in plants? We will talk about those. Then we sometimes see more than one stress at a time. which creates a different response. We will see that. And then we will talk about how plants protect themselves, but this will become next week's topic. Okay, so let's start defining the stress for plants. Okay, these are two same plants, you know. I mean, same species. This is an olive tree, and this is also an olive tree, but it's bonsai. I think you have heard what bonsai is. So this is a very small plant. So if you show these two pictures to a guy, they will say, "Oh, the plant on the right-hand side is so sweet." But if you show this picture to a plant nutritionist, he will feel sorry for the plant on the second part. I mean, on the right-hand side, because the reason this plant is so small is not to be sweet, but because it felt so much stress during his lifetime, and then he adapted, and after all these adaptations, changing its own metabolism and so on, he can still grow happily because it was so successful in having this stress. Yes. Yes, good question. So if we move the bonsai to normal soil, will it grow better? So before answering that, can you tell me if you can hear me easily with this voice? Even let's go slower. Can you also hear like that? Can you also hear? Okay, then I don't need to shout. I will try not to shout. If I shout, please warn me. If we move this plant to the soil, I think it won't grow big because it already had all these adaptations. It changed its metabolism so much. It lost the ability to eat much. For example, you can think humans, if they eat very little amounts for a very long time, their stomach becomes smaller, so they cannot eat more. Yeah, but your question is right. I mean, sometimes plants do some adaptations, but then some of them are like irreplaceable, irreversible, but some of them are not. Branch. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, since a plant cannot grow a lot of biomass in the shoot if it doesn't have the big root. So if you transfer it first, it has to have a very big root, and only after that maybe it can, you know, it's I think very difficult. But I'm answering you by just intuition, so I don't have data about that. Yes.
Do we have genetic regulations?
For sure, we have epigenetic inheritance for stress response. So if your female had high temperatures all the time, you are more stronger, you are more tolerant to high temperature. But for this kind of stress, I'm not sure. So what stresses here are, I think, mostly nutrition stresses, and also the roots are very close, but I don't know how to call this stress. If there is a specific name for it, I don't know. So this kind of stress, I don't know if it is carried to the next generation, but I guess not. I mean, if you take a branch of this tree or take the seeds of this tree and plant, I guess it should become like that, maybe a bit less. I don't know. Yeah. But it's an interesting question. So maybe one can search whether the bonsai trees, next generations, are they still small or not? I think it's a valid question. Okay. So let's remind you a little bit of the topics we have covered on this plant. So it felt a lot of nutrient deficiencies. Which nutrient deficiencies probably it had most? Any idea?
Nitrogen.
Idea? Yes, because it needs nitrogen most. Probably it gets the stress most severely. And then these deficiencies, they activated transcription factors and many hormones so that the roots can take more nutrients. How this activation may occur, for example, if hormones are involved, then maybe some phosphatases are involved, they phosphorylated transcription factors and so on. Okay, and then maybe these genes, they said, okay, root hairs, you are now in charge, go more and try to get the nutrients, so it had more root hairs, but then still there was not enough nutrients, so the leaves pulled the root, but maybe by sending oxygen or something. Root hairs is not enough, now try to grow more root, but then the root says, because it touches here, the touch sensor maybe says, you cannot grow more, so it synthesizes some hormones that stops growing. So all this communication takes place, and then after a certain point, probably the plant's other sensor, which is like, I'm doing really a bad job, let's change. I mean, I'm not gonna get nutrients. Let's change our. Let's do an economical model. So then it shuts off all these growth-related pathways, and maybe it start trying to get more nutrients. So it changed its development. How maybe it phosphorylated some genes, transcription factor that changes the cell cycle regulation. For sure, cell cycle is changed here, and the cell expansion is changed here. How is it possible the cell expansion is lower here? Can you tell like two mechanisms or one mechanism? Cell expansion is lower here. Last week we saw what causes cell expansion. Like a hormone, if you remember, or pH. So if you remember, for cell to expand, the pH should decrease. Maybe the HATPases here, they were stopped by this signaling, and then the expansion was lower. Okay. So what's the definition for stress for plants? The definition is straightforward. If the plant doesn't give the full yield or biomass, it means the plant had stress. So the plant has a genetically defined full potential. And if the plant cannot reach that, it means it had stress. Okay, I want you to notice this is different in humans. So if it was so if we define the same way how stress affects plants for humans, we should have said this is the tallest guy. This guy had the least stress. This is the least stressful guy in the world. But we know it's not the case. The guy has nothing to do with stress. He has a disease and he's not healthy. He has to use the stick. So stress for animals is very different. And for plants, in fact, we can say all plants are stressed every time. Why? Any idea why we can say that? Because, yes.
Maybe because like animals can change their environment by moving from the different factors that are harmful for them at once.
Yes, that's right. And almost always, if there is no other stress, if you put nitrogen to a plant, the plant will grow better. And there is almost no limit for that. I mean, I forgot to show you that before. So this is nitrogen and this is growth. And it should be something like that. But I mean, it really goes to very much. So if you put nitrogen, the growth will immediately increase, but then with a decreasing rate. Very good question. I never thought that. I'm pretty sure it shouldn't be correct for beans. I will check for it. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think lifespan is not about the stress. For animals, yes. Maybe this is how we determine stress. If it decreases lifespan, if it increases likelihood to die, then this means stress. For plants, it's not the case, I think. For two reasons. First reason, plants are divided either perennial, meaning always green and always giving food, and some seasonal. And for seasonal plants, you will see when they have stress, they try to move to germinative stage from the vegetative stage. So they want to produce seeds and then die. But for perennial plants, the stress, I think, doesn't necessarily decrease the lifespan. I don't think so. Okay. Okay. Yes. Sorry? Yeah, maybe I understand. So by following this logic, should we intentionally put some stress on plants? Yes, exactly, that's the case. So we are doing that. For Arabidopsis, for example, we increase the daylight. In fact, this is stressful for Arabidopsis, giving 16 hours of light, but we do that because we want to have the seeds faster. Okay, I have a question for you. I hope you remember this picture from my article. This is iron sufficient medium. This is iron deficient medium. These three are wild types. These are mutants. These three are wild types. These are mutants. And my mutants were doing very bad in iron deficiency. So which one had highest strength? Stress. Is it third plant, second plant, and first plant? Which one had highest stress?
Hocam benim medium 2 and 3 have the same amount of stress.
Sorry? It's the same medium, yeah. Yeah, I want you to think for the answer first. And then talk to your friend about it. Yaren seni de alabilir miyiz buraya yakın bir tarafa? İstersen topluca gel çünkü belki bir iki kere daha böyle bir durum olur. Yeah, please. Yeah. Okay. What do you think? 2. Yes. So the second plant had the highest stress. How do we know that? Because we know that this plant had the potential at least to grow like that, but it grew the smallest, therefore it must have the highest stress. You're right, we exposed the same stress, but what it felt was much different. It felt much, these ones felt much less stress because they had better means to deal with the stress. Okay, so when we are talking about stress, always combine it with the biomass. This is why I asked this question. Okay, another question. First, yourself for 15 seconds, and then please start talking to your friend. Okay, yeah, discuss with your friends, please. More than one answer is possible. This is a difficult question. Okay, what do you think the answer is? B and C. Okay, what do others think? C, only C, not B. Okay. So the question is then probably, I mean, everyone agrees these are iron deficiency. So these are green. Are they? But they are growing in iron medium. So are they? Did they feel iron deficiency stress or not? Levels. Okay. How do you know that they have iron deficiency stress? They're not as big as the iron. Do you agree? Okay. So the only way to answer this question is compare the weight of these with those ones. And if they are smaller significantly, then we say, yeah, they have stress. You get that? Okay. Is very important, right? I think this was a good question. Okay, another question, 15 seconds yourself, and then together. Yeah, you can discuss. Okay, what do you think the answer is? C is the answer. You?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yes.
Yes, also. Because although we don't have data, we know for sure if we had fertilized these with more nitrogen, they should have been bigger. So C is correct answer. Okay, as you see, plants have stress and they can deal with it. Maybe not perfectly, but quite nicely. But we are here to help them as plant nutritionists. So how do we lower their stress? I brought an example for heat stress. So inside the greenhouse, the temperature might be too high due to the sunlight captured. And then we have all these winds generators, they take air from outside and pour inside to cool them down. If we don't do this, the yield will be lower. Let's see if it is also similar to animal farming. I don't know if you have seen such a farm. So when they grow cattle, they have these ventilators with water, and this is to cool down the cow, so they feel better and they give much better yield if it happens. Yeah.
I remember some people trying they are almost
To the cattle.
that show the house they like make yields and
Oh,
increase
yield. Uh-huh.
the matrix.
Wow. Very interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah. Okay, so these guys are our friends. So plants and animals, they help us to survive. So we must decrease their stress. But the problem here is to decrease their stress, we have to understand what makes them stress first. And then we have to either decrease the stressful environment or put whatever is missing, or we have to generate guys who can tolerate the stress better. This is also another possibility. And for the last one, it's the most susceptible way. Just imagine for nutrient stress, instead of putting the nutrient every year, if you make the plant so that it can get it easier from the ground, then this is the most sustainable way ever. Why don't we do that? Why don't we generate plants that are much more tolerant to stress? Huh? Cost. Okay. We are doing that. Why don't we have plants that doesn't require fertilizer at all? It would be really nice to have those. Yeah.
As far as I remember, we once said that we are not producing more than
Because GM is forbidden. Huh? Because GM is forbidden, genetically modified food? No.
As far as I remember, you said we cannot produce immortal matter.
Mortal?
Immortal.
Yes.
We cannot produce plants that we cannot destroy.
We cannot produce plants that is
we cannot
destroy. So because genetically modified food is forbidden, right? This is what you say.
Yeah.
Almost. Okay. These are not true.
Because of environmental change all the time, the plants like catch this organization, so
Yes. But then in greenhouses, we should be able to have such crops then. Yeah. No, it's not. So, because we don't know how to do that. We don't know how plants take nutrients. So we don't know how to make them take more nutrients without a penalty from somewhere else. We simply don't have the information. If we had much more information, maybe in 100 years, we would be able to generate such plants, but right now we can't. That's why you're studying this topic. So we are trying to learn what is already available so that you have better chance to find what is unknown right now. Okay. Now I will tell you about acclimation. So the definition of acclimation is response to changes in environment by directly altering the physiology of the plant, physiology and morphology of the plant. What I try to say is, if you put a plant into a stressful environment at once, it may die due to the stress. But if you give a little bit of stress for some time, then the plant gets used to this stress a little bit, and then when you put it to the real stress, it will be more tolerant to this stress. For example, I have 2 plants 1 week. So I grow plants 1 week without cadmium, and another plant for 1 week with 50 micromolar cadmium. And now I will give them really high amount of stress, high amount of cadmium stress. So I wrote something wrong here. 5 micromolar. So this should be, I think, sorry. Okay. I made a wrong. Sorry, animation. The animation was bad. Animation. Anyway, okay, what I try to say, I may have plants that grow 1 week in 0 cadmium or 5 micromolar cadmium. They both grow happily because this is not too much. But then if I transfer them to 50 micromolar cadmium, which is quite bad for the plant, the guy who hasn't been exposed to cadmium, it will grow very bad. But the guy who has been already exposed to cadmium, although it has now more cadmium in it, it will be more tolerant. So this is acclimation. You subject to the stress, you subject the plant to the stress in small doses, so it has time to prepare for it. And then now when the big stress comes, it's ready for that. Another example is from drought stress, for example. So this is the molecular biology of the acclimation drought stress. Normally, under drought, all these things happen. The transcription factors are upregulated, and then the antioxidant system, cell membrane integrity, shoot-iron ratio, stomatal opening, they all change. And once you have these changes, they take some time. Once you have it with small stress, now if a big drought comes, the plant will be more tolerant. Note that this is different. Acclimation is different than the adaptation. Adaptations are like they are genetically encoded. For example, the cactus, it has small needles. This is a adaptation, and this is due to Mendelian genetics and evolution. You know, evolutionary processes. Is it clear how acclimation is different from adaptation? Yeah. We will also see more examples of that. This is also related to the real life. So in your balcony, sorry, in your living room, if you have a plant, if you put it directly to the balcony, it may die. But if you put it to the balcony, wait 3 hours, take it back, and next day you put again, then it won't die. Because this light stress already started some physiological changes. So your plant in the second turn can tolerate the light stress. Questions about this acclimation? Okay, if not, now I will tell you how this acclimation process occurs for every stress. I mean, this is what provides plants the tolerance to stresses. Sorry, I will skip those ones. I think I forgot to delete. So let's now talk about the abiotic stresses altogether. How many of them are there and what are the properties of those? Please have a look at the list. We will have a start to those. And then I will tell them maybe shortly only. And then next lecture, I will tell them more with more details. Are there any stresses here that are surprising to you? Okay, these most common stresses are water deficit, salinity, flooding, and soil compaction. Maybe this is something you haven't heard. So if you put too much water, the plant will die, and you will see why. Or if you compact the soil too much, then the plant will die again. This is why in Anatolia, soil compaction is a really big problem. The tractors, they pass through the soil and they compact the soil. Okay, and then high temperature, low temperature, even freezing. And then the elements, too much of a good thing, too much of iron, or too much of a bad thing, which is like cadmium. And then light, although it's so nice for the plant, it needs to get light, but too much of it is also bad. Okay, why are these things bad? Let's see one by one. So when the plant doesn't have enough water, what is the function of water in plants? Yeah? Huh? Hydrolyzes. I think it's like it enters into the vacuole and it pushes. So it's the skeleton. It provides the skeleton of the plant. So what happens when you don't water them is they do like this immediately. If you forget to water them, they just go like that. They have a very typical shape. I think I have one picture here. Like this. Because now there is less pressure to keep it up. Okay. This was one reason. And then there are secondary effects. So if the cell doesn't have enough water, maybe it will become too dense, and the reactions that are taking place, they wouldn't have the optimum conditions. With less water, you have less metabolism. Okay, then we have salinity. Salinity is like sodium, potassium, too much of a salt. This has effect in two different ways. One, they don't let the water going into the plant, or they capture the water. I will ask you now why. And second reason why salinity is bad is maybe the thing that causes salinity, like sodium or potassium, is toxic to the plant. When it is too much there, it may replace the elements from the proteins, so the proteins become unusable. For example, to the second one, why salinity is bad. If an enzyme has magnesium, and if you have too much of a potassium, this potassium will start to replace the magnesium from the catalytic center of the protein, and the protein will not be able to work. Okay, and the question, it's a basic question. When there is a lot of salt, why does the water is captured, and why doesn't it go to the cellular processes? How is it happening? Fusion. Huh? Can you speak up?
Water diffuses where it's not.
It diffuses. What diffuses? Water diffuses where salt is.
Yeah.
Water, salt. Why? How does it know that it should go to the salt? Yes.
I think it's about the polarity of the water kind of forms a shell around.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it's like magnet, and salts are like magnets too. So this salt will capture the water molecules strongly, and then there will be less water. Okay. And now flood. Why do you think too much of a water is bad for the roads? Böyle yüksek sesle konuşun arkadaşlar, benim gibi. Drowning, yeah, that's right. There is less oxygen available if there is too much water. Then what happens? Then the roots will not be able to respire oxygen. Instead, they start doing like bacteria, what's it called? Fermentation. They will start doing fermentation. Fermentation is bad. You produce very little energy. You produce lots of harmful substances and so on. And what happens when soil is compacted is the same, because now oxygen cannot penetrate in. That's why sometimes we put perlite into the soil. Perlite lets the air enter easily into the soil.
Another question. When flooding happens, there's also the outflow of nitrous oxide in anaerobic bacteria. Is that also stressing?
I don't know really. I don't think so, because this should take a lot of time, I think, for bacteria to do that process. I don't know. Yeah.
Nitrous oxide emissions.
Okay. And temperature, why is it bad for the plant? Any idea? High temperature.
Proteins are optimally ranges.
Yes, proteins have optimum temperature to work, and in high temperature they can. Another thing is membrane. Remember, so I want to emphasize, if you have a synthetic membrane like the ones we use with syringes, you know that, I guess. These are, I mean, doesn't matter what temperature it works, they will work fine. So why are cellular membranes not like that, and they get damaged from higher temperatures? So my question is, like, you have a needle, syringe needle, syringe, and then there are filters like this, filter membranes. These are also membranes, and they don't care whether it's 30 degree or 5 degree. But cellular membrane does care. How is cellular membrane different than the filter membrane? Yes. So remember, the cellular membrane has a fluid mosaic model. This is not fluid mosaic. Cellular membrane is like everything is everywhere, like a soap, and it's very dynamic. If you have a higher temperature, then there will be chaos, and then yeah, if it's too cold, then there will be too less of a chaos, so there will be less phagocytosis and so on. Okay, that's why. Okay, so we came to the effect of high temperature. Next time we will finish all things that cause stress, and then we will tell how plants deal with those. Thank you very much for coming today.